Welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast. This week we have a customer journey story from classic on-prem PBX to hosted VoIP to UCaaS and then to Teams and also audio codes Voca for contact center. A smaller organization, 100 users. We talked to Richard Sewell, who's the IT manager for the Chartered Institute of Housing. We talk about the whole journey, the move to cloud, what was challenging technically, and also what was challenging from an adoption and business change point of view. Really interesting that the majority of the challenges were really adoption and business change as opposed to IT challenges or movement challenges for the cloud. Thanks very much, Richard, for taking the time to jump on the podcast, and also many thanks to Audio Codes, who are the sponsor of this podcast. Really appreciate all their support. On with the show. Hi, welcome back to the Teams Insider podcast. Always keen to get customer stories on the podcast, and often we're talking about very, very big enterprises, but it's good to get different perspectives. And today I've got Richard. We're going to talk about the Chartered Institute of Housing, which is a very externally facing organisation. I think they have something like 20,000 housing professionals as members worldwide, around 100 people in the organisation, and it's a classic PBX to cloud contact centre kind of story. So very interesting. But first of all, Richard, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
No problem at all.
Awesome. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and your role at CIH, and then we'll get into that journey story?
Yeah, so I'm currently in the IT manager role, so kind of responsible for overseeing anything tech within the organisation, be it hardware, software. Phones is obviously part of that. Done a long time there, from a low role to where I am now. But yeah, I mean, they're a large organisation, offices around the UK, people located in different regions, people located at home, and as well as abroad. So, we'll have people travelling, all need to use phones and other bits of associated hardware.
Awesome. And phones for you is just one of many things you have to look after. So you don't, like some of the organisations we talk to, they'll have a full-time Teams person or even a full-time meetings person, a full-time phone person. But in your remit, your laptops, your cloud, your M365, your phones, your Teams.
Yes. Yeah, there's a few of us, but we do the lot. Yeah, everything.
Nice.
One-stop shop.
So let's talk about the voice journey. So where did it start with the on-prem PBX, and how long ago was that?
Yeah, so probably 10 to 12 years ago, we were still with an on-prem PBX, ISDN 30, bolted to the wall, kind of fairly restrictive over what you can do, how you can do it, so on and so on. People couldn't move desks. Obviously, your desk is your desk, and so on and so on.
Yeah, very classic.
Yeah, very much so. Moving people around was physically repatching cables, yeah, as per classic. And probably about the kind of 10, 12 years ago, we looked at moving. We moved from the PBX to a VoIP system, but with handsets, hosted. It was okay. It worked, got us past the sticking point. No sort of soft clients, no sort of mobile clients. At the point we moved to it, we still had people with people's desks. But then the organisation obviously moved to the point of hiring people with more random locations. That point was the kind of, well, we can't give them a phone. Equally, then the office was had gone from having 100 people in the office all the time to maybe 50, 60 people in the office. So lots of unused space. The organisation as a whole decided that they were going to move to a smaller office, refurbish. So then we had the whole, well, we need everybody to use hot desks issue. The system that we had could do it, but it was very clunky in the way that you signed into your device, to the point where you'd have people come in and it would be 10 minutes before they could take a call. By the time they'd logged in,
if they even remembered to sign in.
Yeah, that's it. Done this. The phone's rebooted 3 times to kind of get their account on it, and it was messy.
Yeah.
So at the point that we kind of we had that, and it was on the roadmap to be replaced. Then COVID happened, and it all got kind of not shelved but put on hold. The restriction of having that phone system at the time was that the everybody working at home, then we essentially had to divert calls off network. So you lost the ability to transfer, you lost the ability to, mask your number because it was literally going to people's phones, and you lose analytics because it's gone off net. So as soon as
and then people use those devices to make calls as well, don't they? So then their personal number or their dedicated number is kind of leaking out into business conversations.
Yeah. All of which are not great things. And colleagues don't like that, which is fine. If they've had to use the personal device for something, they don't want somebody calling them at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
No out of hours service because it's going straight to the mobile. Not great. At that point, kind of following COVID, we then started to look at alternatives and move to a different cloud hosted, but using apps, not handsets. They all had a app on the laptops. People who required it had a app on the mobiles. That worked pretty well, but it was still a third-party app. So although it was integrated with the phones and their 365 account, they still had to remember to sign into it. That was the kind of first thing. Mobile phones, not so much, but obviously there's a lot fewer people using mobiles. Equally, there wasn't much in the way of analytics. You got an incoming call, outbound call, and that was about it. You could kind of
that was your first jump from kind of hosted PBX into like UCAS style, like soft client. Everybody at least has a phone that can work remotely, and
and it did work well. It got them to where they needed to be. If somebody was in, I don't know, Thailand, they could answer the phone. If somebody was in Africa, they could answer the phone. They could make calls. And obviously that presented the organization's number, not theirs. Mm-hmm. So all of those kind of users were happy. But obviously we had the sticking point still with people forget to sign in, lack of analytics, not quite so much flexibility in the system as we'd like, and new starters had to familiarize themselves with the phones, how they worked, and so on and so on. So that's when we kind of did the project start of this year to migrate them back over to audio codes. That obviously now everybody's using it through Teams, or if they're a contact center user, which obviously we've got some people that are fairly kind of traditional hunt group users, and then we've got contact center users who actually need that functionality.
And so you went from the other UCAS to Teams and then to kind of contact center with audio code? And what was the kind of sequence?
Teams at the same. Teams at the same point. Yeah. So obviously we made an assumption, which hindsight is a wonderful thing, and an assumption that was wrong, which was, all users since COVID are familiar with Teams. They used to video calls, they used to chat. If we migrated so that the end point for the phones is Teams, they'll all just be able to get on with it. Some users, it's fine, works. Contact center users, not so much. Slight lack of understanding of there's a difference between phones and Teams. It might be Teams that's ringing and giving you the pop-up, but it's not coming from Teams, it's coming from the phone system. So there were gaps in knowledge there, which we've worked through.
And how did you divide who was a standard Teams user? I think you're using direct routing, aren't you? And who was used Voca for the contact center? Who was a contact center, quote unquote?
So we've obviously got some small-ish teams which always have the same group of people answering the phones and are, apart from leave, always in. Those guys were kind of what you class as your traditional. So the events team, finance team, kind of standard IVR, standard team. They don't really, they're always there, essentially. Whereas the Voca users, they're the guys that maybe some people might do 8 till 4, some people might do 10 till 6. That whole piece of we're not going to put you in a hunt group and schedule each specific person on each specific day, because that's just an administrative nightmare. And actually, it gives no scope for flex when something happens. At the last minute, people are off, days change. All those guys are in the Voca contact center because they needed the ability to be able to sign into the hunt group, sign out of the hunt groups, say they're in a meeting, Wrap-up codes for calls for analytics later on. Those were the guys. So essentially, there's three of the largest teams in the organisation are on Voca. Everybody else is in kind of what you class as a traditional hunt group, really, or a traditional queue.
That's good to understand. And it was interesting. We were talking at UC Expo, and like we were talking about kind of the technical journey from on-prem PBX to hosted VoIP to UCAS to Teams and Voca. And you were saying that, like, yes, there's technical things to do, but actually the jumps in technology migration weren't the hardest bit. Like, it was still classic old school, adoption and people change that was the bigger part of the project.
User training. Yeah. The technical stuff there's always challenges with technical stuff, depending on where you're coming from, where you're going to, because people try and sell you stuff. It's great in a greenfield site. But when a site's got history and it's got config and it's got all sorts of things in the background, things come out of the woodwork that you technically have to get a grip of and fix. But then that's the kind of stuff that's hidden from the users, and the users don't need to know that. They just need to know it's there and it's working. That's unfortunately for the IT guys to get to the bottom of and fix. The training stuff is the big thing, because obviously we made the assumption that, if Teams pops up an incoming video call, you click on answer, you get your call, you click on leave, and there you're done. So therefore, the phone will be the same. We even said to people, the phone will work in exactly the same way, but it will be a phone number you see pop up, not a user's name. But still, we had issues, transfer issues. Granted, that's kind of on our fault for the training side. We had people reporting, I can't transfer calls, transfer doesn't work.
And you've got some pretty heavy phone users, haven't you? You do a lot of like kind of working with external organisations, and a lot of that is still phone based. So things like how transfer, consult transfer, how that works on IP phones versus soft phones as well. There's a lot to that. Often I think when IT pros think about phone, we're like, answer call, end call. Anybody can do this. It's like, well, actually,
you kind of over. It's almost like an oversight that you've got in your brain about how it works. And it was like, I can't understand why you can't transfer calls, because look, I can transfer a call. They'll sit there and watch it, and go, it doesn't work for me. And it's physically one of those. You go and sit at the desk with them, wait for the incoming call, and just watch what they do. And it's like, I understand now. You're trying to transfer it to somebody's extension number. We don't use extension numbers anymore. You just type their name in. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Try it again. All of a sudden, that's all working now. It's like, it was working before.
But it's interesting assumed knowledge, isn't it? Because you're like, I assume you understand now we're using Teams, and Teams is user-based, and therefore we don't need shortcodes and extensions. But to them, they're like, well, I'm still trying to go to Sarah, and she's 4645. I know that's true. Interesting.
And Teams in itself has its own issues, which you have to overcome. So we had a slight issue where, obviously, people's DDIs that they've had assigned for 20 years. Internal extension numbers, if they are sitting in the background of the system, Microsoft Teams by default assumes that your extension number is the last 3 digits of your DDI, which is not always the case.
So you've got that odd scenario where the DDI isn't mapped uniformly to the extensions as well.
Yeah. So that was something we found as well when people were messing around with things. It was like, well, that's another DDI issue there, or another extension issue there, and you've got to put some rules into Teams to basically redirect what it thinks to what you want it to be. They're all little oddities that I think, when you're an early adopter or an earlier adopter, they're in the manual, but obviously, again, the manual's greenfield. And greenfield would assume that if you give somebody extension DDI 001, that their extension will be 001. But actually, when you've got a history, it's just not necessarily the case. There's a lot of things like that to learn. We've had a few issues with analytics, but again, the users who needed analytics had a training session early on. then we start getting tickets to say, oh, the phones aren't working. We're getting lots of missed calls. It's like, pretty sure you're not. Have you looked at the analytics? Oh, well, I've never been trained. You have. I was in the meeting with you. I've forgotten. You have a session with them and say, have you got some examples of these calls that people are complaining about? Yep. Look at this day and look at this, and you go through the list with them, and you kind of go, yeah, it's been kind of sent to 5 different people in your team. Yep, well, it still got missed. I was like, didn't get missed. It says next to them in the log that they all declined the call one after another. Oh. How do I see this? I said, you've got access to it. You've got the link. It's in your browser. We pushed it out as a favourite to you so you can get to them.
And what analytics are you using there? Are you using the standard team stuff or the Voca stuff?
We're using the Voca stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We've got journey kind of interaction reports. We've got, we look at it's mainly the inbound journey stuff they look at, because that's the way that if somebody phones and says, you hung up on me or whatever, that's the easiest way they can find those. Equally, they're using the user activity reports, so they can see which users sign in, I'll say 8 till 4 or whatever, 9 till 5, when they're supposed to, as opposed to, because obviously line managers know what their staff are working. They should know what hours they're working, so they just have to put 2 pieces of information. I like
what you've done here is you've devolved the information, which is not you have to come to IT. It's like they're your team. Here's the reporting. Here you work with them best, because otherwise you've got tickets raising for things that really just information requests.
Yeah, you just get loads. There's the ability in Voca to make colleagues supervisors of their own teams, which then grants them access to be able to look at the login themselves. They haven't got access to make config changes, but they've got access to read all the dashboards. They've got access to read all of the kind of the analytics. One thing I know that the colleagues have done more recently is they've basically the dashboard that we've got on the system is available to view by any user of the system. They have put a link in an email and sent it to their teams to go, just so you're aware, if anybody needs to know anybody's whereabouts, you can use this dashboard, and it will tell you who's logged in but marked themselves as unavailable, and who's busy. And I was like, what have you done that for? And it was so they know that we can see what they're doing, was the answer to the question. If they think, I'll just, because I did spot a user a few weeks ago. I was doing some diagnostics on something else on their machine, and I'd said to them, I said, I can see you've logged in, but you do know you're marked as unavailable. Am I? Yeah. I think you knew that you were, though, didn't you? Oh. There's a big piece of awareness, and I think the whole working from home thing doesn't help. When colleagues are in the office, they know they're in the office with a bunch of people, and eyes are watching them. Yeah. When they're at home, they might sign into the system but mark themselves as unavailable and disappear for half an hour.
Yeah, it's interesting that kind of helping everybody understand there's visibility and there's reporting. It encourages the right behaviours, doesn't it? Because it's like it is going to be noticed. Yeah. And how do you find getting up to speed on Voca and that stuff? Because that is like another thing to understand and manage.
I suppose it depends on your background in IT and what bits you've done. Most of mine's been kind of infrastructure stuff, be it phones, AD, Azure, whatever. I think it looks quite complicated at first glance when you look at kind of IVR routing and everything else. But if you're familiar with kind of network diagrams and stuff like that, actually, it makes perfect sense. If you're familiar with Power Automate, it makes perfect sense because it's all drag and drop of boxes and joining endpoints to endpoints so your flow works. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's difficult. It looks more complicated than it is at a first glance, but actually, if you're familiar with a lot of kind of normal IT stuff, it's not that difficult. You'll have the odd thing like the DDIs thing with with people's extensions, but that's just a Google away essentially, isn't it? It's why is it assuming this? Oh, because Teams does, and this is what you do to fix it. You just put a normalization rule in.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear from your perspective because you and your team are multidisciplined. Like I spend a lot of time talking to people that are fortunate to have a full time person, or they outsource that responsibility. So it contact center more so than teams even. Like that's decently interesting and business facing as well. So an important service.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is having an escalation path to kick it up the road if you need to. You can be as familiar with something as somebody that's trained in it, but there's always going to be something that potentially will come out the woodwork, or some odd situation that is like, I don't understand what's going on with that. So there is a high kind of spotlight on how good your partner is, and how far you can kick a ticket further up the chain. We've had that. I mean, we use Bulb for our kind of next level of support. So if there's something that kind of comes in, I might triage it first. If I can fix it, great. If I can't fix it, then it gets kicked up the road. And obviously they've got a direct relationship with audio codes. So there is a path of, tech specialist, developer, so that you can actually look after stuff in a better way, a more prompt way. So user adoption, partner, training, they're the key bits. But they're the key bits, I think, in any IT project. You can have any IT project that will go sideways. It doesn't have to be phones. If you've not got the right team behind it, that's when it goes wrong. which we try and avoid, but sometimes things go wrong, and there's not a lot you can do about them. They just go wrong.
Then it's having the right network around you, as you said, like the partners you trust to have the right answer or to be responsive. We talked about this at UCX, but obviously a lot of that show was around AI in phone, meeting recaps, meeting summaries. Like, how much was that either on the radar then or on the radar now in the move to Teams? Like, was that there's Copilot and that's exciting, and Voca has AI IVRs, or is that not really on the radar yet?
It wasn't a requirement when we were doing all of the scoping for what we wanted to move to. It was on there though for, we don't want to go down a road that's a dead end. We want something that's got the ability to do these things in the future, should we decide that we need them. So we as an organisation, obviously we did the phones. The the conversational AI piece is still kind of sitting on a whiteboard, for want of a better phrase, for the phone system. Meeting assistants we've already had a trial run on meeting assistants. It's already been purchased. It's already rolled out to the organisation, and they're using it, or the 20 users that have licenses at the moment are using them. They had a meeting of their management team last week where they said, right, we've purchased it, we ran the trial, everybody said it was good, so we've rolled out licenses to everybody who ran the trial, but actually, here's all the users in your teams. We want your feedback to say, are these guys in external meetings? Do they need a meetings assistant? And those licenses are going to be ramped up as well in the coming weeks. So stuff like that it's not the reason to do or buy, but it's actually an enabler in the future, as long as you've not gone down a path that means
so you're on the right platform when you're ready. I'm interested. It's such a topic in the industry at the moment to see where real customers are on that journey.
It's it's the same as, I don't know, lease lines, for example. Do you want a 100 meg lease line? Do you put a 100 meg bearer in? No, you don't. You put a 100 meg line in on a gig bearer, so that in the future you can just phone your ISP and say, can you turn it up? I need some more bandwidth.
That's such an IT metaphor, Richard. I love that.
It's the easiest manner of doing it, isn't it? It's you go down a path that when you want to turn it up a bit, you can. You don't go down a path where it's like, nah, you've used it all. You've got to kind of, I suppose you can have the foresight for maybe 3 to 5 years. things change at the moment at a pace that you'd be hard pushed, I think, to think 10 or 15 years.
I would agree. It's placing a bet on the right, like the platform, isn't it? Really, is that will continue to serve. And I guess the other thing from your journey story, like moving platforms isn't as hard as it used to be. The adoption and the change is a big impact, but once you're in the cloud, at least you're in the cloud.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, PBX stuff was literally a case of physical handsets, physical patching, physical. You had to schedule that. You had to say to people, don't bother coming into the office on Friday. The phones aren't going to be working. We're going to have desks out or pulled out. That was a big thing, quite a big disruption, and you had to plan for it. With the previous cloud, and to be fair, with audio codes as well, recently, it was more a case of, well, you all use Teams. Your license for Teams phone will go active on Thursday. The work will happen on Thursday through the daytime after the license is live, and as soon as your numbers port to the new platform on Friday, then your app will stop ringing and Teams will start ringing. What do I need to do? Nothing. It's all done. It's all done in the background. That means it's a lot slicker, a lot easier for users, a lot tidier, and to a certain extent easier to control. You don't have to rely on 5 guys being on site patching and putting things on desks. You can do it maybe 1 or even 2 pairs of hands remotely. You don't need to. Do I need to come into the office for this? No. You've already got Teams on your laptop. It will just switch.
And what's your ratio of physical phones to Team soft phone now?
We have no physical phones.
Oh, okay. So it really is just soft phone. That's awesome.
Yeah. The thing you would class as a handset is the security phone on the door to get into the building that's sitting on reception's desk. But that is something that's not capable of being converted to VoIP.
Yeah, that's just a one single use case.
Yeah. If they change the security system in the future, then we know that we could actually get it to route through audio codes. If I suppose you wouldn't do this, if a DPD guy, Amazon guy, whatever was at the door and it was Friday at 4:00, everybody's cleared out, the office is in darkness. You could potentially, I suppose,
buzz it.
Have a guy say, "Can I leave a parcel?" Yeah, okay. Buzz the door, right out. You could do that, which obviously at the minute they just can't do. It's not possible.
Yeah.
The scope for future things, be it AI or be it silly things like that, the security stuff.
That's awesome. Well, Richard, thanks so much for taking us through that story. It's really interesting to hear that of multi-hop journey, and a really good takeaway, I think, for people that actually the journey from cloud or cloud to cloud in this case, and to Voca for your contact center. It isn't, the technology wasn't the biggest thing. It's the adoption, the change, the training, the reporting. That's what really mattered for you.
Yeah. It's always about the users.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, and
no
doubt we'll catch up again soon.
That's great.